Hi, my name is Shammie. This is my truth and my story. I'm 48 years old. I'm the youngest of four children, two boys and a girl, and then me. My parents came here about 45 years ago from Trinidad. I was three when I came, and they came up here because they wanted a better life, and they actually did create a better life. I was the first in my family to go to college, and all of both of my parents' families to get a degree. And with that, they actually bought two buildings in Brooklyn so we can have a better life. They're really big on family, so like when we have family functions and stuff, it's not about whether we could go. It's sort of like even as old as I am, we have to go. My parents were always big on education because they didn't have an education in Trinidad, and so that was always the priority number one. When I went to college, they paid for that for me to go to college, and it helped me because I always felt like I had their backup in case like I didn't like a job or I didn't know what I wanted to do. With all of us, my parents pretty much helped us all financially, so that we had that little extra edge to succeed. I think by the age of 8, I kind of knew that I liked boys. 30 years ago, like homosexuality was so not a part of society, so we hid it. When I came out, it was right around the time when AIDS came out. So when we would go to bars and clubs, it was like smack in your face about condoms and don't have sex. And so it was pretty scary coming out. Like you kind of wanted to retreat back in. Even before that, going in school, there wasn't any other gay people in school. And those that were, if it was one or two of them, they were really very feminine. So it wasn't something they could hide. So students, kids are kids. Kids will see it and they mock them, make fun of them. So I mean, I wasn't very feminine as a kid, but so I just retreated. I was very introverted. I stayed by myself. I didn't have many friends. I came out to my family when I was I would say about 25, 28, which I was considered pretty late. And I pretty much told my mother first, and she was like, don't tell your father, it'll kill him. So I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell anybody. She knew, and I kept it hidden. She freaked out. My mother, it was all about her place in society, and what will people think of her, and they'll think that she was a bad parent, and she wanted me to get married, which I at one point I entertained the thought, because as Hindu kids, we're not really taught to live. Like as a Hindu child, you're supposed to live for your parents, and as an adult, you're supposed to live for your children. And then as you get older, you're supposed to live for God. And I was like, okay, I'm at this age, maybe I should just have children, maybe that'll change it, and it'll change me. But at some point, I fell in love, and that just changed everything for me. It took a while for me to really realize that, that was her come from, wasn't right or wrong. But at the time, it's what she felt that she had to do. I was already a grown man when she wanted me to hide my sexuality. I didn't have many friends, and I was also very, I had asthma as a kid, so I was literally out of school for like 40 days a year. So I didn't have much friends being home, so it wasn't an issue for her. It wasn't until actually I was out in college and I was out, going out with friends and, really making more like gay friends and straight friends. And I was actually living with someone at the time when she found out. And at that point, she was not having it. The control was there, and she was going to try everything she could to break us up, and ultimately that I think that was the end product of it. She said, I'm going to take you to Trinidad and marry you, and I was like, all right, just make sure you tell that girl what you know before, that girl and her family what you know before we get married. And she just, at that point, she said I would go to hell, but it wasn't, I don't think it was her truth, I guess. But she didn't say a lot of things to me. It was just very that she felt that I felt, my experience was that she thought I was broken. No, I wasn't broken. But at the time I thought I was broken. At one point, after I told my mother, I was very depressed. And I felt like if my father, he didn't know who I was. Like my being gay was beginning to expand within me, and it was becoming more and more of who I was. When I was younger, it was just a small part, but as I grew older, it became bigger and bigger about who Shammie was in this world. And I felt like, wow, my father's never going to know that. And I would never really know if he, I would never know if he loved me for who I was. So at that point, I never thought that I could even tell him. So I tried suicide. Obviously, it didn't work. But at the time, my aunt who found me called my parents, and my father was one of the guys. He showed up with my mom. And she was still very distant from me because of it. I think she was upset that I caused this and now my father knows. And the next morning, I'm like scared shit, right? I'm like, oh my God, what is my father gonna say? So he's like, I get up and he's like, you, come over here. And he said to me like the one thing that I really needed him to hear, because we weren't very close growing up. He was a disciplinarian, he was always working, and when he was home, it was always, he wanted things a certain way. And he just said to me, he says, you know, like, I just want you to be happy, and all of your cousins are trying to just be happy. And I may not agree or understand what you're going through, but I just want you to be happy. Do you know what it would do to me and your mother, like, if you're not here anymore? And he's like, you're my son, I love you. And that was life-changing at that moment. Not only did he say it, but every moment from then on, my father has always been my biggest supporter. He's actually enrolled, in a way, my whole family to rally behind me at that moment. So I have uncles and aunts and cousins and extended cousins and their kids and everybody who are so supportive of me and my life. So yeah, that's it was like what was wanted and needed for me to really come out to the whole world. I was like, I've got my father. I'm gonna be good. It was life-changing, and this is from a man with, you know, when people are like, oh, well, our culture, you know how they grew up. But yeah, my father grew up the same way. And when it came down to his child, that's when he had that changing moment. And even though my mother still struggled, and when I had my boyfriend, my mother didn't talk to him, my father would walk in my house and be like, hey, guy, what's up? How you doing? You know, like, and he fostered a relationship with him. And when I would bring him around my family, my father would be like, oh, that's Shammie's partner. And he was very cool and very comfortable with it. Now, if I'm not going to, whether he had his own little concerns or whatever, he did tell me, I don't agree with it, I don't understand it. I just want you to be happy, though. You have to let your kids live their truth, which isn't an indicative of whether you're a good parent or a bad parent. They're born that way. LGBT is not a choice. Just love on them. That's it. We all want to be loved, and we all want to know that we matter. And the only way that you can really give that to your kids is to just love on them. You just feel like this weight's lifted off you when you have the backup of your family, when you have the backup of, you know, your siblings. You know, my brothers and sisters and I, we were all very close. My nieces and nephews called me up and they're like, hey, uncle, you know, just live your lives, just be happy. Like, I'm sure that my nephews and nieces would probably have maybe a different interpretation if they didn't know someone, and you attach that to the cause. So the more of us that are out there in the world, being ourselves, living our truth, it just makes it seem like, you know, it's okay. Now I'm at the best stage of my life. Definitely not broken, and definitely more outward focused on really paying it forward to the community so that younger LGBT kids don't have to really go through what we're going through. Hopefully our struggles were not in vain if they don't have to do the same struggle. Have I ever suppressed my feelings of the same sex to fit into a social setting? Up until I was 30, every time I went out. Every time I went out. With coworkers, with friends, with school friends. It was always like, if I was looking at a guy, it was always from the side of my eyes. And if I got caught, I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it was pretty often. It was hard because it's wearing a mask, and after a while that mask is, you know, it's heavy. It's not a light mask to carry. Definitely not a light mask to carry. When you're constantly feeling like something is wrong with you, and people are making you feel, especially if they're making like a gay comment, and you don't even like, you know, address it. Now, in my situation, there's no one around me who can make a gay comment without me addressing it. And maybe not to set their boundaries, it's to set your boundaries on what's acceptable around you. I was a dancer in the community, and while I danced, I was never out. Now, people may have said things and thought things, but I never confirmed it to anyone, and not even my closest friends in the business. club promoters, other dancers, singers. Like they would question me, and I would say no, or I would say that, oh, that's a pretty girl, or I had a date with this, and I would lie about it, but it was me not living my truth. I really did feel like I had this mask on, and I never really took it out until I was home by myself, alone. There were other guys that were out, and they were pretty comfortable, and people were, so it was more personal. I just felt that that would trickle over to my business and my work life, that would trickle over to my family life, and if one group knows, the other group will know. And I didn't want to, I just felt people would judge me, and I didn't want to be judged. It's changed because even now at work, in the dancing community, everybody knows. Like, I'm out. I don't think you could be more out than me. When I came out and I would go to bars and clubs, there were like no other West Indians who were in the gay bars and clubs. There was me or maybe one other. But now there's so much, and there's so many, and we get to go to straight, like regular Liberty Avenue bars, I guess, and still have a good time. And I mean, do I feel safe when I go with my friends? Sometimes no, depending on who's in there. I mean, my expectation is that the owners would provide a safety spot for us. Yeah, definitely. Right now, the next big thing I would say is really for the Caribbean diaspora to embrace that everyone is equal. There's so many West Indian kids out there that's in the West Indies that are struggling. They can't come out. They don't have laws. Laws aren't going to be changed unless people step up. And people are going to step up when, unfortunately, there's bad things happening to people. So hopefully those bad things don't have to happen if we can, as a community, really just give the voice to that. They can influence the politicians and the laws by voting. By voting for those politicians that back their views. My views on same-sex marriages is there's no same-sex marriage. Marriage is marriage, period, between two loving, consenting adults. So I believe that it's a constitutional right in this country that two people should be able to get married. Any LGBT person that sits down and wants to sit in the back on this issue, it's really, people are really, like, they're putting themselves on the front line, and I think we all need to. I want same-sex marriage to be a universal right, and for myself, I never really thought about getting married, but I want that right. Like if I meet, like the man of my dreams, I want to be able to have that right to get married. So I'm in the struggle. How would that mean to me to be married in the Hindu religion? As a spiritual person, I would want that. It would be very important for me. And I think it's important for there to be pundits that are willing to do that. And not just in Hinduism, I think in all religions. The whole issue of marriage is a legal entity that we're fighting for. The issue of marriage and religion is very separate. And this country needs to separate that, but they're trying to tie it in together. What I like about Hinduism is it's a religion that says what you should do as opposed to what you shouldn't do. So it says that you should treat everybody like they're godlike. You should try to, you should be a good person. You should give love. What I'm proud of is that when I came here, there was like 3 of us. And now, 25 years later, there's like maybe 3,000 of us. And that's because people are stepping forward. And so many of us, I would say a good part of us, are out to our families. And we bring so many non-LGBT people into our community. And that adds to just our size. There's so much joy and love. There's so much support. I've seen and heard people were down and didn't have money for this, and people got together and they got money, and someone was beaten up, and like we were out there with the media making sure something was done. We are a community that really, we're a non-violent community. Most of the times the violence is inflicted on us because of us just being who we are. And law enforcement need to have that kind of training to deal with that. Right now, the next step is for organizations like this to really get politicians on board. It's extremely important for the law enforcement to be trained on LGBT rights, because then that's the only way that law enforcement will treat everyone equally. Outside of socioeconomic status, outside of ethnicity, outside of religion, outside of marital status, outside of age. It's really about what's wanted and needed. And there's so much stuff that's out there when we're dating, in terms of STDs, in terms of in terms of just the safety of going on meeting people online, that the younger crew and even those of us need refresher courses on. There's still a lot of stuff going on out there that we need to really just check ourselves and be prepared for. We have so much of a me agenda that if something happens or someone dissuades in a different thought pattern, we take it so personally. I find that there's to be so much self-focus that you can't really be community if you're focused on yourself. Like you can go to support someone because you want to be a part of their vision and take yourself out of it. When I go back to Trinidad, right, and how does my behavior change? It's a different mentality, and they are very reserved in the way they behave, but I've also seen some Trinis that are very, they're out there and they're living their truths in a very flamboyantly joyous way. My self-acceptance, I'm at a spot where I just feel like I can appreciate love, because when you're judging yourself, there's really no filters for love to come into you. It's when you release that judgment from yourself, then of course there's an authenticity in regards to the love that you receive. You can live a healthy lifestyle, you can make all this money, you could have the fancy house and car, you can even give back to the community, and if you're not living your truth of who you are, then all of that is just hypocrisy. This stage of my life, being honest with myself it's freeing, it's light, it's fun, I'm okay to make mistakes, I'm not always going to get it right. And also too, it's my honesty, hopefully it's infectious. So the way I show up will definitely affect everyone else to show up at their best self and in their truth. The one message I would like to share with anyone watching this about me living my truth is that that's when you connect to everyone, is when you live your truth. And your come from is from a place that I'm okay, and I'm enough, and I matter. And then you end up getting to pay it forward to other people so that they understand that they're enough and they matter. When you feel that you're at hitting the bottom, then at that point you have nowhere to go from up. My suicide and all of that really has me to become the man that I am today. I wouldn't say that should never have happened, but for others, if I could pay it forward to someone else, that is not ever an option. Like, you're whole, perfect, and complete. And God has a plan for you bigger than you have for yourself. Just be patient, and life gets totally phenomenally better.